Now, the second means of motivating students, actually obliging students to engage in oral participation, revolves again around the word accountability. I have systems set up in my instruction whereby students, they're quite forceful, somewhat draconian, where students are obliged to participate if they intend to pass my class. I weight the oral component in the determination of a student's grade very, very heavily, and particularly in the first year of instruction. Here's a chart that shows you how I weight the different elements of a student's grade. So you can see that fully 50% of a student's grade in the first year is determined by their oral participation in my classes. That's a very heavy weight to give to one single element of a student's performance, but there's no element more important, especially in the first year, than that which describes a student's ease with using the language and which requires a student to speak the language on a regular basis if they're to succeed in my classes. And then you can see in the second, third, and fourth years that a more balanced approach is taken between the different elements of a student's performance in class, although oral participation remains a significant factor. Well, if you're going to give a heavy emphasis to the weighting of the oral participation grade in determining your student's overall grade for the course, you need to have a very objective manner in which to collect the information. The students must be totally convinced that their oral participation grade is not a subjective matter whatsoever. And for that purpose, therefore, I'd like to share with you the student seating chart and record-keeping spreadsheet that I've created. I'll show you where it can be found, where it can be downloaded on the ULAT website. If you go to Teachers from the home page, and then scroll down to Resources for Teachers, you see right here it says the seating chart and record-keeping spreadsheet. Click on that green button, and that will download for you the spreadsheet. I'll open it, and here it is. Now let me explain how you would use it. The spreadsheet, which would be copied onto a piece of paper, photocopied for many different class periods, contains room for 6 different classes, 3 on the front, 3 on the back. Here's the first of those classes right here. You note at the top I would enter in here, for example, I enter in here the number 1 to indicate this is the first class of the day. I would put that in, of course, before photocopying it. Class number 2 would be entered here, etc. Whatever hour of the day you happen to have that class. And then let's take again the first class exclusively. I'm going to enter in here my students' names. Let's say Bob, Jim, Mary, and Sue. I'll just go that far. Within these rectangles corresponding to each student, I'll be adding a certain amount of information in the course of my class period. First of all, some of this information will not be entered whatsoever in the spreadsheet dealing with oral participation. It's there rather for your attendance purposes. But I would add in an A within the rectangle for an absence, a T for a tardy, and an E if the student is excused in the midst of class for whatever reason. A horizontal line if I want to keep track of times when a student interrupted instruction, had some form of negative behavior that disrupted the class. Again, that has nothing to do necessarily with the oral participation sheet. However, it's helpful for just your own record-keeping purposes, either attendance or behavioral. And then finally, although it's not indicated here at the top in this little key here, I put hash marks within each of these rectangles for the quantity of times that a student contributes an idea, participates orally in the course of the class period. Now, I also want to mention, this is, I think, pretty significant. I myself don't manipulate this sheet. I don't fill out the sheet myself. I give it to a different student on a clipboard every day. I print off the sheet, I photocopy it, I put 1 sheet per day on the clipboard, and then I give it to a different student in each class. And that student is the student who's responsible for filling out the information for me. That's going to rotate so that every day it's a different student who's doing that and providing that information for me. It's really important that you give a student the role of filling this out, because you want to have your hands free and you want to have eye contact with your students. You don't want to be looking down at a chart. You don't want to be filling out a chart while class is going on. You need your hands free for the purpose of gesturing, for the purpose of conveying visually the meaning to your students, and so delegate this task to a student in class and have that rotates, so there's a different student every day.
So this gives you an idea of what one of those class periods might look like at the end of on your spreadsheet at the end of the school day. One of your students in the course of this class period, which by the way it says was class number 1, so the first hour of the day, one of your designated students recorded the data for you during the course of that class. You see it was September 5th was the date on which this took place. You'll see that, of course, the student number 1, student 2, student 3, those will be replaced by the actual names of the students who are part of the class. So this would read Bill, Mary, Joe, Sue, etc. You see that the student indicated that student number 12 was absent that day. That's going to be very important information to make sure that when you enter information regarding student participation, the student is not penalized for not having participated in the course of the day. So the student indicated that student number 12 was absent, student number 6 arrived tardy to class, and then you see the hash marks which indicate the sheer number, the quantity of times that students volunteered information in the course of class discussion. Once the day has come to an end and you have the data from all of your classes that you've taught, you'll take it and enter that information into a very important tool that will be the topic of the next post. It is called the Oral Participation Evaluation Spreadsheet. It's a tool which is extremely valuable, which looks very complicated, but which is very, very easy to use. And I'll explain it to you in the course of the next video.